Welcome, Lady Iraklis. Thank you once again for coming to Istanbul for the anti-NATO summit. There's the NATO summit, which will be held in Ankara on the 7th and 8th of July. And it's an important summit for not only for NATO itself, but also Turkey's involvement in NATO plans. So we would like to have your opinions on what's going on about NATO in the region, in the Middle East and Black Sea region, in Europe, and about the activities that were held in Istanbul and other cities in Turkey regarding the NATO issue.
The World Peace Council, which is an international anti-imperialist peace organization uniting peace movements from all over the world, was founded around the same period when NATO was founded in 1949. From the beginning till today, the World Peace Council was always not only in opposition, but struggling and fighting against NATO, its policies, its plans, its crimes. NATO was never a defensive, peace-supportive organization. On the contrary, it was an organization of war, an organization of aggression. It was a tool in the hands of imperialism, which were organizing wars, interventions, invasions, coups d'etats, and many other crimes on behalf of the interests of the multinationals, the big capital, and the powerful governments, members of NATO. Therefore, we are very pleased as World Peace Council to be, as we have been in all previous summits, on the spot where NATO hawks, the enemies of peace, are will hold very soon, in a few days, their summit. And for one more reason, that we don't like prohibitions, restrictions, and authoritarian decisions of governments which are hosting NATO and their fellow criminals in the NATO plans, while suppressing or trying to stop and prevent the peoples to raise their voice against the war plans of NATO. That's why we came to Istanbul upon the invitation of the Peace Committee of Turkey, and we are leaving Turkey with the satisfaction and with the conviction that NATO and NATO members and the state apparatuses are powerful, but the voice of the peoples, of the peace-loving anti-imperialist forces cannot be stopped. And this is actually what happened. We held with the Peace Committee of Turkey and of course with the support of the Communist Party of Turkey conference, an anti-NATO conference with the participation of more than 20 people from various countries, political parties and movements, and two international organizations, the World Peace Council and the World Federation of Democratic Youth, a very successful conference in a common spirit of approach against NATO, against the character of NATO, against the current plans of NATO, which are being actually witnessed in many parts of the world. NATO is not anymore the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is a world sheriff around the world with a special dominance of the United States of America, but no government of the member states of NATO can claim that this is just the responsibility of the United States. All decisions of NATO always are being signed and ratified by unanimous decisions, and this makes all the governments co-guilty and responsible for plans of armament. More than $2 trillion are being spent worldwide on military spending. 60% of this money are being spent just by NATO states, which is clear that NATO is arming not in order to defend peace, on the contrary, in order to threaten other countries, in order to encircle militarily the Russian Federation, in order to operate in the Asia and Pacific for the purpose of containing emerging economies like China, and also actions in Middle East in particular and in Latin America. For the World Peace Council, the current moment in a world where in the international imperialist system wars, aggressions, and threats to peace and stability are daily phenomena in many corners of the world, we are very much alerted and troubled with the situation especially in some of the hotspots. Starting from the Middle East, which is here, the neighborhood, also around Turkey. There is, first of all, for decades long, a genocide, a murderous attack of Israel against the Palestinian people, a genocide, a slow genocide, which deprives also the Palestinian people from a homeland and an independent state. There is recently, now we don't know if we call it a war or a war which has ended, with the ceasefire and the agreements with the United States and Iran, but for 2 months heavy bombardment and attacks on all kind of targets, including civilian targets and schools and hospitals and facilities in Iran, and the murderous actions of Israel against the Lebanese people. The Middle East cannot come into peace if the key issue, which is the Palestinian issue, will not be solved. The other huge hotspot, which is the NATO-Russia war on Ukrainian soil for more than 4 years now, where the starting point for the World Peace Council is that we do not agree with any unilateral change of international borders by anybody. This would include, in this case, the initiatives and the actions taken by the Russian Federation in the official beginning of the war, on end of February 2022. But at the same time, while saying so, insisting so, World Peace Council knows very well that the enemies of peace, the ones who don't want to come to a political solution and settlement of this conflict, this bloody conflict of many hundreds of thousands of casualties and destruction and disruption of normal life for the Russian and the Ukrainian people, the enemies of peace who don't want to settle this issue are actually the Ukrainian side, the regime in Kiev, under the sponsorship and support of the major imperialist forces also inside NATO, because we know that in the beginning of this conflict, in the first semester of 2022, there was a chance in the talks which were taking place here in Turkey, where we are, to find a political solution which would have saved hundreds of thousands of lives and would have come to a political solution. That's why we condemn the encirclement of military encirclement of Russia by NATO, the heavy armament and policies of 5% of GDP for each NATO member state, the programs of the European Union, which is hand in hand with NATO, for 800 billion euros for military spending, and a big part of this money goes to Ukraine, to the regime in Kiev, which is not willing and not in position to take a course towards a peace settlement, political settlement of the. We are at the same time, although it is far away, concerned also on other developments in the world in which the major forces participating in NATO are part of, such as in Latin America. We all were very and are still very concerned about the military intervention and the policies of the United States and its allies in Venezuela, in beginning of the year, and the current ongoing and increasing day-by-day threats, including a military intervention or aggression against the island of the revolution, the socialist Cuba. We are clearly on the side not only of the Cuban people and the people struggling for the just cause, but we believe strongly that we express the voice of the majority of the peoples in each nation and in each country struggling for a world without imperialist wars and exploitation, for a world of peace and social justice.
And as you know, we had the anti-NATO summit in Istanbul and other activities as well as in other cities. How was your impression about these activities?
We noticed with satisfaction and we share the pride our Turkish comrades and friends from the anti-imperialist, peace-loving forces, the communists and other friends have shown in calling and organizing with success actions under a very rare, almost unprecedented atmosphere of prohibition, authoritarian prohibitions and threats of the state authorities towards anybody who wanted to organize protest in order to raise voice against the NATO plans. In this context, the fact that despite the banning, the absolute prohibition of any political activities against NATO in Ankara, in the capital of Turkey, yesterday, Sunday, despite that fact, a symbolical but massive, in this context, under this light, protest was organized and held by the Communist Party of Turkey in Ankara, is a very encouraging message to the Turkish people, but also to the other peoples in the NATO member states and to the world, that prohibition and banning cannot stop peoples from expressing their view in favor of peace against the war plans of NATO. We denounce strongly the actions taken by the Turkish authorities to arrest more than 100 peace-loving people who were protesting in peaceful manner and without any other intention in the streets of Ankara. And we demand the release of all of them because they have not done anything in violation of any laws, and they were peaceful protesters raising their political voice. In Istanbul yesterday, we have to underline the important initiative taken by the Communist Party of Turkey and the Peace Committee of Turkey to organize even bigger, massive anti-NATO protest rally in a historical, even for us, out of Turkey, coming out of Turkey, from abroad to Turkey, and a historical and symbolical place, the Taksim Square and the Gezi Park, from where a symbolical but very strong and powerful and dynamic march, anti-NATO march, was held yesterday with great success. And despite the incidents and the events in Ankara with the arrest of fellow fighters for peace and friends and comrades, we believe that the initiatives also in other smaller cities of Turkey is a strong message which is encouraging for the continuation of our struggle.
Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, thank you.